Back in October of 2020, Becton-Regional High School in East Rutherford was the first school in Bergen County to reopen with full-time, in-person instruction. We spoke with Superintendent Dario Sforza to find out how they were able to pull it off and why they felt it was so important to lead the way in reopening our schools.
The entire pandemic is negative. It brings negative feelings. It doesn't bring positivity to anybody. But we make the positives so loud that the negatives become impossible to hear.
I think I'm going to get that tattooed on my shoulder.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. We closed March 13th, and our first 42-year-old staff member passed away from COVID April 1st. So you talk about being punched in the face. You know, it was a scary time. Nobody knew, which way to look. What it did to us, though, as a community, is it brought us closer together. We started a COVID pandemic relief fund right away, raised almost $20,000, and we started feeding families. Our team looked at March to June as survival mode, and we said, come September, we have to deliver, and it's a non-negotiable goal because we saw our students during that springtime deteriorating. We did kind of like 2-lane highways so that students aren't crossing each other's paths. We also have one-way stairwells. We've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars in getting our school ready because we know you just changed your whole craft. 120 years of teaching the same way, and now we're asking you to teach the students in front of you and also teach the students that are miles away at home. In order for us to do that and to do that seamlessly, and for you as a teacher to be able to trust in leadership, we have to tell you, hey, whatever you need, you let us know and we will provide it.
If we were in London now, I'd be walking on
yeah, so you'll be walking on this side, so.
You're so corny.
You write my jokes, Matt.
Fair.
I read a quote by students that simply said, we've lost our way of being. If you've just lost your way of being, you think you're going to pay attention as clearly in front of a classroom. You get some people that say, hey, my kids, they're still getting the curriculum that they need when they're home, but there's so much more to a school. This is a full industrial style studio. Think about trying to do this at home. It is just impossible. Not only CTE programs such as this, but our arts programs. These programs are what inspire students to be able to think critically, and also what motivates some of them to come to school and take some of the other core and traditional courses. Some of the people that came up to me and said, why is everybody so scared? I said, you have to understand, they have been isolated from the world since March. So it took a lot of work to be able to convince them, hey, come back. It's okay, it's safe. Trust us. And what we also started to see is school districts that were closed and virtual had more cases than we did. And there's reason for that. Check it out. Students come in the morning, they have their face mask on. They get their temperature checked, they sit down 6 feet apart. From probably, I would say, October, school districts started to finally see the data coming out that although community spread was rising, community transmission within school districts was not. When you're home, it's not a structured environment. You may be going to your friend's house, you don't have the face mask on. If you want to get schools open and school districts open, they're going to need the funding. And that's going to be an important part of us not only sustaining our opening for the rest of this year, but also sustaining it and making sure we close the gaps that this unprecedented global pandemic has created. And those gaps stem the gamut from students that, there may be food shortages, from people that may have lost their jobs, parents that may have lost their jobs, to the educational gaps, to the mental health gaps. And those, in order to close those gaps, you need resources such as counselors, mental health professionals, and then of course teachers to provide the remediation of the learning loss that has happened since now we're going on a year now since last March. Districts are going to need additional funding in order to sustain this.
There's plenty of reason to be hopeful that we're in the beginning of the end of this pandemic. Closing these learning gaps, however, is going to require a long-term effort that is just beginning. And to sustain that effort, we need funding.